Hey everyone, my name is Dan Gnanakan, and today I'm going to be teaching from chapter 8 of Foreign to Familiar by Sarah Lanier, focusing on different concepts of time and planning. This chapter really resonated with me personally because it helped me name tensions I've felt for a long time. Um, Tensions I've experienced while adjusting to life in the United States, and again, when returning to more relational cultures like my own, which is Sri Lanka, and also places like India and Nepal, after living in a very clock oriented environment here in the United States. So, as you listen, I'd encourage you to reflect not just on the on other cultures, but on your own instincts around time. What feels respectful, what feels frustrating, and why. So, why time matters? One of the most important things to understand is that time is never neutral. The way we use time communicates what we value. It communicates who matters. It communicates what we believe responsibility and respect looks like. That's why time differences often feel so personal. For an example, when someone is late, changes plans, or doesn't follow up on a schedule, we don't just see behavior, we tend to interpret meaning. We start asking questions like: do they care? Are they irresponsible? Are they wasting my time? And without even realizing it, time quickly becomes a moral category, and that's where tension begins. So Sarah Lanier in the book describes these patterns using language of cold climate cultures and hot climate cultures. So in general, cold climate cultures tend to organize life around structure, um, planning, and schedules, and hot climate cultures, on the other hand, tend to organize life around relationships, flexibility, and responsiveness. So, throughout the rest of this talk, I'm going to use the more practical language of clock oriented time and event oriented time, just because that's usually where we feel these differences most clearly in everyday life. Just want to say neither approach is morally superior. Um, an example of, I guess, a cold climate culture would be the United States, and also a hot climate culture would be Sri Lanka, where I'm from. So, when we compare these two approaches, that is, structured clock oriented time versus flexible event oriented time, uh, the contrast becomes very clear. In structured, clock oriented cultures, schedules organize life. So, start times and end times matter. For them, efficiency and predictability are valuable, and being on time communicates respect. On the contrary, in flexible, event oriented cultures, life organizes schedules. The event and the people in it matter more than the clock. So, for them, flexibility communicates care, and waiting can actually be a way of honoring relationships. The key thing to remember here is that the same behavior can communicate completely different meanings depending on the cultural framework you are operating in. Now, structured time has real strengths. It allows complex system to function. It creates predictability and coordination. It helps people plan ahead, steward resources well, and meet responsibilities consistently. In places where many people and many moving parts need to work together, structure can be a gift. It reduces chaos and makes daily life manageable. So, this isn't about saying structured time is wrong. It's about understanding what it's good at. At the same time, flexible time also has real strengths. It creates space for presence, adaptability, and deep relational connection. When schedules don't dominate life, people are free to respond to what's happening in front of them. This approach often leads to deeper learning, deeper hospitality, and deeper community, because people and not plans are prioritized. For an example, when my father in law first visited Sri Lanka, he commented on how easy life felt, how people moved through the day without urgency, responding to what came rather than rushing into the next thing. This was a stark contrast to what he was used to in the American culture, where he had a to do list and daily tasks that he would go on to accomplish one after the other and tick things off. So, tick things off his list. What he was noticing wasn't inefficiency, it was a different rhythm, one where time served relationships rather than pressure. Now, Lanier in her book says to show respect to people is to respect their time. This quote helps put to words how cold climate, clock oriented cultures understand time and respect. But it can also be helpful to for understanding hot climate, event oriented perspectives on time if we read it through a cultural lens. In a clock oriented culture, respecting someone's time usually means being punctual, sticking to a schedule, and not keeping people waiting. That's how respect is communicated. But in many Eastern or hot climate, event oriented cultures, respecting someone's time means something a little different. It means respecting their idea of time. In those contexts, time isn't primarily measured by a clock. It's measured by presence, availability, and relational attentiveness. So, taking time, waiting, lingering, or even rearranging your plans can actually be ways of showing honor. In that sense, the quote is true in both cultures. It just expresses itself differently. To respect someone's time isn't always about moving faster or staying on schedule. Sometimes it's about slowing down, taking longer, or being willing to interrupt plans for the sake of a relationship. Problems arise when one approach is used to judge another. Structured cultures may see flexibility as irresponsibility or lack of discipline. Flexible cultures may see structure as cold, rigid, and even people blind. At that point, the issue isn't really time anymore, it's interpretation. Differences become judgment, and judgment damages relationships. Understanding this doesn't eliminate frustration, but it gives empathy, and empathy changes how we respond. Now, I want to share a story from Nepal that captures this reality very clearly. A pastor I've known for a long time had organized a mission trip with several other pastors involved to travel to a faraway village. When he heard that we were visiting his area, he decided to push the entire trip back by a day so that he could stay and welcome us. From a clock oriented perspective, this felt inconvenient, as if though we were causing a real inconvenience, and even irresponsible. People were expecting him in the village, and plans were already in motion. And it just, even the idea of entertaining his idea of postponing his trip felt really selfish from our part. But for him, honoring the relationship and hosting us mattered more. What really stood out to me was that everyone else involved understood and affirmed this decision. No one was frustrated and no one questioned it. So the relationship took priority over the schedule, and that was seen as the right choice. So the key takeaway from this whole lesson is that time reveals what we value. Learning to see time through another culture's lens doesn't just help us avoid frustration, but it helps us love people better. In ministry and everyday life, wisdom isn't choosing structure or flexibility. Wisdom becomes learning when structure serves people and when flexibility creates space for deeper relationship. That discernment is a part of growing cross culturally, and honestly, part of growing as a human being too. Thank you so much for listening.